What's up, guys? Cage here. And we just had the PlayStation State of Play for Ghost of Yōtei this past, what was it, Thursday? It was on Cage Day. So we have to get into all the little details surrounding this game and my overall impressions and really how this game compares to Ghost of Tsushima, because I think that there's a lot of similarities here, perhaps too many similarities here. There's a lot of the same, and I think that that is a major issue, but also the changes that have been implemented aren't really very convincing to me. And this is coming from someone personally. I was a huge fan of Ghost of Tsushima. I still am. I still really enjoy that game. I went on to platinum that video game back on PS4 Pro back in the day. And to me, it is still one of my all-time favorite 8th gen video games. And so naturally, I was very, very excited for Ghost of Tsushima 2. And they gave me something else instead. Something else that feels very foreign to me, but also is a lot of the same to me. And both of these situations kind of seem to be on the negative side. We're dealing with a new protagonist, and is she very convincing? I mean, I don't know. Not so far anyway, but then you just have the fact that this just feels like the same old place, the same old world, even despite it being 300 years later in the game's, in the series' lore. And so there's a lot of things that's making me say, overall, this game is not worth buying, at least not day one. I'm not convinced. I'm not going to force it. I'm definitely not going to go out of my way to undust my PS5 for this game, because I haven't played it in a while, and I will not be buying this game day one on PC either whenever it happens to come over to the platform, because like everything else, it surely will. But without further ado, let's get into the details surrounding Ghost of Yōtei and everything that I've gathered from the PlayStation State of Play surrounding this game. And real quick, guys, if you happen to hear some thunder in the background, yeah, it's rated pretty hard here. But overall, we watched this live on the stream this past Thursday. Actually, it was like a couple hours after this event had come out. But overall takeaways from a lot of people in chat was like, I mean, it looks cool, looks pretty decent. But I don't think anyone was convinced. And I was watching, shout out to my boy Jack Move Johnny. I was watching his live stream where he had Blaze 4K and I don't know, Wonton, whatever the hell dude's name is, on the live stream, and also the chat. And we're talking about like the PlayStation fanboy zone over there, right? Jack Move is a longtime PlayStation fanboy, but he's been relatively disinterested in PlayStation for a plethora of reasons. But PS5 generation really just hasn't been panning out, to kind of just summarize that situation in regards to how he feels. And not everybody in his circle feels the same way. I feel like Blaze, my boy Blaze, shout out to Blaze, generally feels kind of relatively even-handed about PlayStation generation. Some things positive, some things negative. He's sitting kind of in the middle, and a lot of their viewers tend to be PlayStation nut garglers. You know, just to summarize that. But even some of their most dedicated fans that watched this event weren't really convinced that this game is a true next-gen sequel to Ghost of Tsushima. And I think that's for a lot of reasons. The main being that this is a game that's set 300 years after the original game, and I'm not really convinced of anything around this. I think the first thing worth going into is the main protagonist herself. She just kind of feels like she, for all intents and purposes, replaced Jin Sakai. Honestly, I still have yet to even recognize or remember her name. Everything about her just kind of feels like a copy and paste from the male protagonist. I'm not really getting anything here that makes her feel like she comes into her own in any way. And I think that at least what they've given us by her story thus far, and to be fair, I expect them to not give us much in regards to her story. That's something to experience while playing the game. But everything I've gotten from her story in this game thus far is very basic revenge plot. Like, it's nothing really anything crazy. It just seems very basic. Jin Sakai's story was very depthful in nature And it doesn't necessarily start off that way, but it starts off extremely bombastic. They're in the middle of a war with Mongolians, and things unravel very quickly for Jin in the worst way possible. And he comes to terms with the reality the samurai themselves, with the way that they do things, can't win this battle against an enemy that will do any heinous thing that they could think of, any underhanded tactic. And so Jin takes it upon himself to not necessarily go upon the way of the samurai, though they do give the user the ability to choose to be the samurai, the ninja. But Jin decides that given the situation, the way of the ninja is far more superior to the situation at hand, and the only way really to win, which leads to a very personal confrontation with his family, with his past, with his uncle, who is lives by the samurai way and looks down on Jin. The story that unfolds is so depthful and like it just engrossed me. I felt Jin's pain. I felt his struggle, and I liked Jin as a character. A lot of people want to pretend Jin is a nothing burger just because he's a stoic male protagonist. But honestly, a lot of this comes from people that like bitch boy protagonists, or to play mostly as women to begin with, from what I've seen personally. I mean, you don't have to be necessarily in love with Jin as a character, but the main important thing about Jin's character is that you learn to respect Jin as a character, despite him doing some things that in his world are deemed not respectable. And I think that that is the thing that the viewer, the gamer, it is communicated to us by the crafters of the game, by Sucker Punch themselves. And I really love Sucker Punch as a game developer. I think that they're one of the best that Sony has, but I'm not really too convinced with the protagonist, and particularly the gameplay that's presented to us. The gameplay here doesn't feel like it's anything different. And the changes that are indeed presented feel surface level at best. They introduce a bunch of new weapons that you could choose from. The problem with this is that this is a weapon system that just simply is replacing the stance system from Ghost of Tsushima. It just feels very surface level, which honestly makes me feel that there's some validity in the supposed rumor or leak that this was originally supposed to be standalone DLC. I could certainly believe that, in all honesty, given the type of game this is and how it really just doesn't change very much in comparison to the first game. The one thing that I think is awesome is that you could end up losing your weapon in battle just as much as you can make your enemy lose their weapon in battle. That's probably the main thing here that I'm seeing from the combat. That is very interesting indeed. That's different. That, I think there's a lot of validity to that choice. The combat here, I think there's a lot of great things to it, but I think that Ghost of Tsushima had the mass majority of those great things. I'm predicting that there might be a little more dismemberment than there was in the first game. Like, yo, I saw a couple arms getting, getting cut off, and all that stuff is awesome. There's a lot of blood. Hopefully there's more blood. I mean, given, the video here, I'm liking what I'm seeing in regards to losing an arm, becoming one-handed, as well as, the blood. I'm wondering if this could happen to your character if you happen to lose and die in the game. That would be interesting too. There would be certainly some interesting depth to that. So, and honestly, one thing that really does kind of take me out of it is just the reality. You have this small female in comparison to the other dudes that she just literally dragged the shit out of this one guy. It's like, if this wasn't a realistic art style, I could believe that, but we have a very realistic look to this game, a realistic world. I mean, obviously it is artistically driven in a sense as well, but overall they're going for realism. This is Sucker Punch, a game developer that won awards for their dedication to the history of Tsushima itself and the history of the samurai, even if they chose to defect from a couple of things. back in those times, specifically with the time period of Tsushima itself, which is fair to say, but that was more of a choice art, or even for the sake of the katana in this situation. But when it comes to just overall what she's doing, how believable it really isn't believable. What is believable is what happens right then and there. Yes, I believe that certainly would happen to her far more often than you'd think. And to see this little woman doing this, I don't know, bro. I mean, in all fairness, I really did like Blue Eye Samurai. It was a French animation, I believe, and I really liked a lot of the things that was going on, but it took on an art style where you had a female protagonist that was really a bit on the androgynous side. To be honest, she reminded me a lot of me in that art style and how she carried herself. It was relatively believable. Now, the main protagonist here does carry herself in a rather a bit of a mystique, and that does add to it. And I think that the use of guns being added here is actually a really big positive. That's another decent change. I mean, unless you consider it replacing maybe bombs or something. I feel like a lot of the choices here are just replacements for things that we already had anyway. It's just a little bit different. Another thing we have to discuss is just the reality that the main protagonist is voiced by, unfortunately, an obnoxious person who is very pushes their own agenda pretty openly. From what I've seen, she's definitely toned it down a lot, but a lot of people already know what she's about and who she is, and it really doesn't help when you choose to use the face of this individual who happens to be quite an unlikable person in the space. Unfortunately, there's kind of that situation too, and we can't run away from it. We can't ignore it. It just is what it is in that situation. I see this protagonist, I see this obnoxious bitch that clearly has shown they don't really like me as a gamer or gamers in general, and they try to humanize her by saying, I guess, that she was playing through Tsushima, and shout out to her if she is and whatnot, but it's kind of hard to unsee the type of person that this is. Maybe in the future you should consider, if you're going to hire an individual who is, let's say, obnoxious in nature on purpose and isn't just about doing their job and kind of just not being a bitch. IRL, maybe you want to consider not making them look like the voice actress. And another thing too, the voice acting, it's not very good if you're playing in English. And normally I like to play these games with some English voice acting. I know the heresy. Oh my god, I watch anime in English too. Oh boo fucking who. That's just my preference. You don't have to agree. But in this situation, it's kind of hard to suspend disbelief with the English voice acting. Jin, while speaking English, obviously it doesn't make sense for the time period, but the voice actor had a very good way of just making it work, man. And I played the entire game in English, so that's just what it is. I think that the voice acting, at least for Ghost of Tsushima, was way more convincing here. Now, one thing that I definitely have to give big props to is the customization that we're seeing here. Particularly the main protagonist's outfits. Shout out to them for actually acknowledging that men and women are different and that armor sets that fit men wouldn't fit women properly. She has a bunch of armor sets here that are not only beautiful, not only vary in look, style, and color, but they also are made to fit a woman. So shout out to them for doing that. You know, a lot of games now, particularly a game that I love, Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remaster, has made the armor sets for male characters the default for female characters instead of actually doing the work and making the women have their own armor sets like in the original Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Stuff like that is absolutely ridiculous. That is even a choice. So the fact that they did this, cool. As for the music here that they're going through, Overall, I think that the music is okay. I think that the tracks that they showed weren't relatively convincing to me, but they weren't turnoffs either. They were okay. The big thing that people are kind of debating is if the inclusion of lo-fi music and Watanabe from, obviously he's a well-known figure in anime, one of the most influential. He's done Cowboy Bebop as well as Samurai Champloo, and they wanted to get the vibe of Samurai Champloo in the game as an option, which I think is a great option. I could see myself listening to the lo-fi music theoretically if I'm playing through a bunch of side quests and trying to get through that. But the main quest, I would definitely stick to the natural tone of music that the developers were intending for, just to see their vision out and judge the vision for what it is, not necessarily replacing it with lo-fi music. I think that it's a great option. It wasn't a turnoff by any means. It wasn't like full on hip hop or anything like that. No, it was cool. It was subtle. It was vibey. I really don't have an issue with that at all. And to get lastly into the world itself, I think that the world is beautiful. It's luscious. It's varied. But the original game, also the same thing. There's a lot of vibes going on here. There's a lot of style. But once again, I'm getting kind of the same vibe overall. The traversal looks awesome, just like the first game did. There's nothing that they're doing particularly with the world and the traversal that's a turnoff. None of that per se, but there's nothing really that is convincing me that this is a true upgrade from Ghost of Tsushima either. If it's a bigger world, and I believe they said that it is. I can't quite remember. If it's a bigger world, my question is, do you fill out that world properly to accommodate it? I have to question all that stuff, but really that is to be seen later on. But overall, world beautiful. The choices of style and how you want to go about experiencing that world. If you want to go in through it Kurosawa style, or like I said, Watanabe lo-fi music, just they want to let you have whatever vibe that you want, which is cool. I appreciate giving the player choice in that regard, and I think that they did a relatively good job with that. They're further seeing out their vision for the first game and giving the player choice, which is cool. Sadly, a lot of PlayStation sequels that are coming out PS5 generation are having a really hard time really differentiating themselves and being a true upgrade to their original vision, which is the first games. And this is like kind of unprecedented because games, back on PS3, you'd have the first game that come out. And then the sequel was like the true defining vision of the game developers at that time. And then they would come out with a third one, which would be usually, this is not too bad, but not as good as this, the second game usually. Whereas now it's like the first game is the true vision, the second game is just the same old, same old. I think that God of War is guilty of this. I think quite a few. The Last of Us Part 2. I mean, a lot of people kind of feel some type of way about it. A lot of people weren't very impressed by Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, whereas I think that's one of the few games that kind of was objectively better than the first. But hey man, it's generally, it speaks to that of PlayStation this generation being more of a mixed bag, and given they're a full third-party game developer now, slash publisher, it's something to talk about. It's something to look forward to, and unfortunately, not as much as you would think. Being a primarily PlayStation 4 gamer last generation, I haven't really been wowed by PlayStation. I've kind of abandoned them for the most part. And if they do happen to put on a good game, hey, I'll buy it. It's like the same situation with Microsoft after, 360. And when they shit the bed with Xbox One, I was very resentful. And now I'm kind of like, well, if they do put out a good game, I'll buy it. But for the most part, I'm not really depending on either of these two big console manufacturers at this point for games, because neither of them are quite doing it for me. I mean, that, obviously the future, we'll see what happens. But overall, Ghost of Yōtei just feels like more of the same. It just feels like the original vision truly was Ghost of Tsushima, and a lot of people believe in the rumor that essentially this was originally supposed to be a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, including Jin Sakai, or at least, more in tune to that time period around him and building his own group of ghosts per se. But yeah, this is all speculation, rumors until further notice, really confirmation from anybody out there. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think about this PlayStation Ghost of Yōtei state of play. Were you impressed with the game? Were you let down? Are you meeting somewhere in the middle? What impressed you? What is a disappointment to you? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you can, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me over on Twitter at Mario Kart if you'd like to continue the conversation. Consider becoming a channel member. Gets you instant access to the Discord, gets you dope ass emotes for the live streams every Tuesday and Thursday night. And yeah, guys, sharing this out really, really does help. You have no idea. And with all that being said, I'm out. Peace.